What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made a way into episode 360 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on YouTube and on X. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on X and on Instagram on social media. And also subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube if you haven't already. Just going to say this right now. If you haven't subscribed, definitely do so because IE Sports Radio surpassed 500 subscribers most recently. So I've been pushing for IE Sports Radio to surpass 500 subscribers. And for those that have subscribed, I am eternally grateful. I promise you all I'll be pumping out more volleyball content or whatever content you all want. Also, again, just tell your friends, tell your family, tell any sports fan to subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube. And again, make sure to follow IE Sports Radio on social media as well, aka on Instagram and on X. For the last 12 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Before we get on into the volleyball content, we're going to talk to you about what IE Sports Radio is all about. So without any further delay, I'll see you all in a little bit.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out all of IE Sports Radio. Definitely check out the website. Definitely subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube if you haven't already. We would greatly appreciate your support. And for those that have supported us and that continue to support us, you're awesome. I promise you all I will continue to pump out the content just because it looks like most of y'all do like the volleyball content that was published, especially the second scrimmage of the U.S. men's national team. So that is duly noted right there. So again, keep following IE Sports Radio on social media and definitely subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube and check out the website as well. Also, make sure to follow Set Point on social media on X at set_point.ie as well as TikTok. I promise you all I'll get the TikTok fired back up in a little once the NCAA women's volleyball season begins. I know I haven't been too keen on that, but what can you do? Especially when you're like doing everything on several different accounts. You can also follow me personally on X as well at Teran Rodriguez 1. You could also follow Set Point on Instagram at set_point.iesr. You could also follow Set Point on Facebook, which is kind of tethered to my Instagram account. Just type in Set Point, and then you'll see the beach volleyball icon that I used to have. And then that's how you'll be able to follow Set Point on social media, aka on Facebook. So without any further ado, let's get on into the volleyball action. So we had last time we left off, we previewed the men's VNL. So for me, this is basically, the title is called the Homestretch of Summer, which means we are so close to NCAA women's volleyball season. I should also make note of that just because we're actually 1 month out in terms of pretty much most of the volleyball matches starting, just because it's currently right now as this recording, it's July 20th. I think the first match begins on July 21st with the AVCA First Serve Showcase, which I think is pretty cool. I actually got an email regarding that, so thank you to Pat Henderson for kind of, making note of that. But honestly, I will just say, honestly, that's how close we are to NCAA women's volleyball season. So without any further delay, let's get on into the men's VNL recap. So I actually got a question. It says, does Costa Rica have a team? Not in the VNL. So the VNL, Costa Rica probably has a team that's like vying for a VNL spot or vying for an Olympic spot. So there was no Costa Rica in terms of men's volleyball from the VNL. So there you go. I just need to address that question. So week 3 of but yeah, now let's recap the men's VNL. So a lot happened in week 3. Japan went 12-0. The U.S. finished 2-2, which they got to a good start, but then kind of fell flat in the final 2 matches. We had 2 teams punch their ticket to their first ever VNL finals, which I thought was awesome. We had Poland kind of rising back up to the top. We had Bulgaria just barely missing out of the men's VNL by the slimmest of margins, aka by losing to France. So, and then we had the most shocking relegation of all relegations. So, let's just dive on into it. I've kind of rambled on too long. So rather than start off with the USA like I did last week, let's start off with the first match. Let's go in chronological order. So the first match we had was Canada-Argentina of the men's VNL of week 3. And I'm just going to say this right now. This was the toilet bowl match. This was one of many toilet bowls, aka the matchups where teams are trying to avoid relegation. It feels like urinating trees tank bowl, except instead of tanking, you're trying to avoid relegation. So first and foremost, Canada, they were teetering toward being relegated. So looking at the standings going into this week, Canada was 1-7, as well as China was pretty much the worst team. But fortunately for them, they got a ticket to the VNL finals just because, well, for starters, they're the team that's hosting. But Cuba was actually the team that was on the cusp of being relegated because they were 0-8. But looking at this Canada matchup and Argentina matchup, I didn't know what to expect. I thought Canada was better than this, than they actually were. The first 2 sets, they were just reeling and dealing against Argentina. They were up 2-0, and I actually managed to catch like pretty much the second half of this match live when I could. I should also make note of this. I'll make note of this a little bit later. But some of the matches were actually streamed on other platforms, but that's for later. So the third set, Argentina managed to withstand a late comeback from Canada as they took set 3, 25-23. Canada took the first 2 sets, 26-24 and 25-22. The fourth set was all Argentina. They just steamrolled Canada in that set, winning it 25-13. Then in set number 5, it was just bonkers. Canada had a match point opportunity. They couldn't convert it. And going into that 5th set, I was thinking to myself, oh boy, this is dangerous territory for Canada just because they are horrible in 5-set matches or matches that go the distance. And that kind of reared its ugly head as Argentina eventually completed the comeback, and they completed the reverse sweep, winning set 5, 19-17. So for it being a quote-unquote toilet bowl, I thought Argentina this was kind of one of the more exciting toilet bowls. And this pretty much all but guaranteed Argentina to be safe from relegation. So good for Argentina, but man, another bad loss for Canada. Being up 2-0 yet again and then getting reverse swept. It's like Canada is a glutton for punishment. They really are. And you're about to find that out in a little bit. So a big-time matchup for Argentina. I imagine Agustin Loser was just on his A game, and everyone else just played to their ability. So there you go. Next matchup we had was Cuba versus Belgium. I would kind of classify this as a toilet bowl. It wasn't an exciting matchup. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't say it was an exciting matchup, but we finally got to see Cuba play its best brand of volleyball, even though they lost one of its top middle blockers to a knee injury or a lower leg injury. But regardless, Cuba finally picked up its first win of the men's VNL, sweeping Belgium 25-23, 25-19, and 25-20. Finally, we got to see Cuba play some darn good volleyball, and thankfully for their sake, they were able to win. And it was good because now they were on the board and they had the possibility of not getting relegated. So good job to Cuba. Next matchup we had was Japan-Italy. This was a fun matchup. So Japan went into the week 8-0, and while Italy still had a chance of claiming a spot or claiming the top spot of the men's VNL. They were 5-3. But that 5-3 record was very misguiding as Italy pushed Japan to the brink. But in the end, Japan was able to take down Italy in 5. Another 5-set win for Japan. It's like Japan is a glutton for 5-setters as well. It's just surprising. Yet, and you're about to find out that Japan's 5-set win rate is just unbelievable, dude. It's unbelievable. Next up, we had Slovenia taking down Germany in 4. This was not surprising, in my opinion. I thought Slovenia was expected to win this matchup, and they did. Germany taking a set off Slovenia was pretty solid, but honestly, Germany came into this week needing to pretty much run the table and get some help along the way, as Germany was 4-4 going into this week, while Slovenia, they had aspirations of getting the number 1 seed of the men's VNL. But Slovenia was able to take care of business, taking down Germany in 4. So good job for them. Next matchup we had was Ukraine taking down Iran in 4. Again, this was not a surprising matchup. Ukraine, they were one of the hot and red hot flashy teams that were pretty much trying to vie for a spot in the men's VNL final. And this was a big step in the right direction for them winning that first match, winning that spot in the men's VNL final, and winning against Iran. Iran is no joke. Iran, I would say they kind of pushed Ukraine, but honestly, Iran, it was kind of expected to see Ukraine win just because Ukraine's got a lot of firepower. And even though this is their second year in the men's VNL, Ukraine is just on a tear. The next matchup we had was one of the more exciting matchups. We had Poland versus Bulgaria. Now, Bulgaria was kind of in the boat where they need to pretty much run the table if they want to have any hope of making the men's VNL final. And then meanwhile, for Poland, they need to pretty much run the table and get some help in order to, clinch the number 1 seed of the men's VNL final. So there you go. But in the end, Poland with Wilfredo Leon, amongst others, was able to sweep Bulgaria. They didn't even let Bulgaria get to 20 points, which I thought was pretty darn impressive, if you ask me. So Poland, I thought, was very good. Let's be honest with ourselves. Poland with Wilfredo Leon is just a force to be reckoned with. I want to say, and there's a reason why Poland has won the VNL in back-to-back years. I just think this Poland team is just built different. So do not sleep on this Poland team by any means. Next matchup we had was Turkey sweeping Serbia, as Turkey moved ever so close to clinching its first ever men's VNL title as they swept Serbia 25-23, 25-19, and 25-18. I should also mention that Serbia was one of the 3 hosts from this past week in terms of the men's VNL. The other hosts were the United States hosting in Chicago and Japan being played in Osaka, but I digress. But yeah, Turkey has been one of the bigger surprises. Them and Ukraine are the biggest surprises when it comes to this year's men's VNL. I thought this team was very impressive, and Turkey, they really opened my eyes to how great they've been this year. So good win for Turkey. Serbia was kind of in that situation where they pretty much needed to run the table. They came in 4-4. Turkey was 5-3, but Turkey just proved that they deserved to win, and I thought they were rather impressive. Next up we had was Brazil sweeping France. Now, both France and Brazil were kind of the 2 powers of the men's VNL that were in a very weird situation. Brazil, to me, it just feels weird to see them in a situation where they're kind of trying to kick and scream their way to the finish line. They came in 5-3, while France came in 4-4. Brazil was able to pull off the win. The first 2 sets were very tight. Obviously, Brazil wound up winning by 2. And then the third set, I thought Brazil really looked like the Brazil that we all came to know. France now put themselves in a very sticky situation. I think that loss pretty much all but sealed their fate in terms of missing the men's VNL final. So unfortunate for France, but Brazil just can't. They just wanted it more, and that's what happens when you're fighting for your VNL lives. So there's that right there. Then you had the United States playing China. So again, the U.S. was hosting China, and this matchup was kind of expected. China they were just there just because they're trying to get more reps in before the VNL finals, while the United States was hoping to get the number 1 seed of the VNL finals. But in the end, the U.S. dusted off China very easily. Look, there's not much to really talk about. I mean, the U.S. pretty much, this was kind of the warm-up match. This was kind of the U.S. being back on U.S. soil matchup. This was basically to get the crowd hyped and to make basically a preview of what's hopeful to come. And then you had Italy sweeping Belgium to close off the Wednesday matches. Again, this wasn't really surprising when it came to this, though Belgium, I thought, played pretty solid. They were in all 3 of those sets. It's just that Italy, knowing that they needed to lock up a VNL final spot and they still had a chance at the number 1 seed, was just basically playing their game and playing their brand of volleyball. So I was very impressed with how Italy took down Belgium. I'll give credit to Belgium. Even though they're not going to the VNL finals, I thought Italy was just absolutely, they were just with them throughout most of the match. And this is kind of the scary thing about the VNL. Teams that have nothing to play for are the most scariest. And then a team that's also fighting for relegation is also one of the more scariest. But I thought Italy, to me, they were fantastic. And this is the Italy I've come to know. So that was that for Wednesday's matchups. Thursday's matchups, the first matchup we had was Japan versus Canada. So here's the interesting thing. So Japan, one may think Japan could actually rest their starters just because they are oh so close to locking up that number 1 seed. Not to Japan. Don't say that to Japan. But in the first 2 sets, Canada came out guns a-blazing. They took the first 2 sets, 25-18 and 26-24. I was really impressed. Again, this was kind of the matchup where I kind of caught the tail end of this matchup. And I was just, wow. I was like, wow, one of the worst teams in the VNL is beating the best team in the VNL. Go figure. And I was thinking to myself, well, maybe this is the match where the 5-setters kind of catch up to Japan, or the close matchups catch up to Japan. And it looked like Canada was actually going to win this match in 3. They were up 22-19 in the third set, but Japan went on a 4-0 run. They went to their bench, and one could actually say that they were actually resting some starters, but they actually kind of went to their bench. They have a deep bench, by the way, and they managed to make the adjustments that they were needed to. They eventually took the lead at 23-22 and eventually held off Canada, winning set number 3, 29-27. Then set 4 was pretty much all Japan as they took that set 25-19 to force the 5th set. And then set 5 was pretty much all Japan for the most part. Canada did have moments where they tried to close the gap, but Japan was just too much for them. Japan took the 5th set 15-11. As Japan wound up winning their, I think it was their 5th or 6th straight 5-set match, which I thought was very impressive, if you ask me. Japan was just, look, it's just really impressive of what, it's just really impressive that, of how good, it's just really impressive that Japan just continues to just win 5-setters. It's like, I don't get it. Japan, look, they even had some of their top players on the bench, like Ran Takahashi. Like, it's just incredible of what we're seeing from Japan. Japan just continues to win 5-setters. They have won 5 straight. Yeah, they had won 5 straight 5-setters, and it was just incredible, if you ask me. Like, you can't script this. You just cannot script this type of run right here from Japan. And then, meanwhile, for Canada, while Japan has won 5 straight 5-set matches, and then they moved to 6-0 in 5-set matches, Canada dropped their 7th 5-set match, which you got to study this. Both of these teams need to be studied. Japan is finding ways to reverse sweep their opponents and win in 5 sets. Well, Canada is finding ways to lose 5-set matches and get reverse swept. It's just unbelievable, dude. Like Canada, look, and this is no shortage of talent because Canada has a lot of talent on their team. They've got Kofi, they've got Skylar Varga. It just is ridiculous of how Canada is just finding ways to get reverse swept or losing in 5 sets. It's just, I don't get it, dude. It's like, I just don't understand how Canada just can't find a way to close these 5-set matches. It's just unbelievable, dude. Some are saying it's coaching. Some are saying it's just the whole coaching staff entirely. But it's like, whatever this issue is, they got to contract the program. They got to contract, because this is a top 10 team, but they're finding ways to just lose in 5. Like, this may be the best, worst team in the men's VNL, or the best, worst team in the VNL that we've seen. Because, again, it's not a skill issue. It's not a talent issue. It's just, they just can't seem to close. It's unbelievable, dude. But anyway, that is that right there for that Japan-Canada matchup. Next up, you had Iran taking down Germany in 5. Now, again, Germany pretty much saw their hopes of making the men's VNL finals pretty much go down the drain. But the loss to Iran pretty much all but sealed their fate, as Germany losing to Iran just basically was the cherry on top. Iran beating Germany was very impressive. I did not expect Iran winning that matchup, but Iran has been right there with a lot of these teams. It's just that Iran just can't seem to put it together in terms of taking down some of these big-time opponents. And Iran beating Germany was kind of one of their bigger wins of this year's VNL. So good job to the Iranian men's team. So there you go. Next up, you had Serbia taking down Ukraine in 4. Now, Ukraine was coming in red hot, and they were knocking on the doorstep of getting one of the seven remaining spots of the men's VNL finals. But Serbia had other plans. And like I said, the most dangerous team of the men's VNL is a team that has nothing really to play for. Serbia pretty much saw its fate being sealed after they lost the previous day. But honestly, I got to give credit to them. They just played, I wouldn't say they played perfectly, but they just played inspired volleyball. And that's all that you could hope to do. So you had that right there. And then you had France sweeping China. Okay, this was kind of expected. This was also to be expected. France sweeping China was, even though France has pretty much all but sealed their fate in terms of not making the VNL finals, France at the time, they knew that they still had a chance of making the VNL finals. They still mathematically had a chance. And France still has some good players like Antoine Brizard. They had Mathis Heno. I don't think he's related to Hilir Heno, but I digress. And then they had Clement on their team. But honestly, this matchup showed that France is still pretty darn good. So a good win for France. And you're about to see that this France team is still pretty good. Next up, you had probably one of the more surprising results. You had the United States sweeping Brazil. Now, when it comes to USA-Brazil, I thought this matchup was at least going to go 4. And when it comes to most Brazil versus USA matchups in volleyball, throw out the records and expect at least a 4-setter. But the U.S. really strut their stuff. It kind of reminded me of the women's USA-Brazil matchup that was just a few weeks ago or a week or so ago, where the U.S. just pretty much wound up winning a close first set, and then they eventually wound up winning the next 2 sets quite handily. This was the case with the United States in this matchup. So I thought the U.S. did a really good job when it came to this Brazil team. Brazil was fighting for a spot in the men's VNL finals. The U.S. knew that their hopes of getting the top seed was all but set sailed. The only way that they would get the top seed is if Japan were to lose out and then the U.S. were to win out. But the U.S. took care of business against Brazil, and no matter what, they punched their ticket to the men's VNL final. So beating Brazil was just kind of the cherry on top. So a good win for the United States. Next matchup we had was kind of another tank bowl / toilet bowl. Cuba versus Argentina. This was kind of another matchup to avoid relegation, and Cuba understood the assignment as they took down Argentina in 5. Look, for all of Cuba getting put in the ringer more often than not, Cuba really started to show that they were the real deal and they had a better team than what their previous 8 matches going into week 3 had indicated. Cuba had been catching a lot of bad breaks, but so had Argentina. But Cuba came through and they wound up winning in 5. I was very impressed by Cuba. They played inspired volleyball, and Argentina should still be out of relegation range when it comes to this, because they still earned a point regardless of this. So both these teams played inspired volleyball, and both these teams should be on the cusp of avoiding relegation. Then next up you had was Friday's matchups. You had Japan taking on Belgium. And for the first time since week 1 where they took on Ukraine, Japan wound up winning a match in 3. So Japan, with that win, punched their ticket as the number 1 seed of the men's VNL final, as the men's VNL finals number 1 seed. Yeah, Japan punched their ticket as the number 1 seed of the men's VNL finals. And they pretty much finalized their opponent. They're going to be playing China. So Japan, it felt good to see them not needing a 5-set match. Now, I don't know if they managed to rest their starters, but if they did, and they wound up beating Belgium with most of their B team, that's just even more impressive. So this Japan team is just on a tear, dude. Then we had Turkey reverse sweeping Ukraine. This was a very impressive win by Turkey. I really wanted to see what Turkey can do, just because Turkey, obviously, they have been the surprise team. They and Ukraine, this is the battle of the 2 surprise teams. Turkey took down Serbia in their first matchup, and then they had a bye. Well, Ukraine did fall to Serbia, but they did manage to take down Iran. So another win for Ukraine could have punched their ticket to the men's VNL finals for the first time in program history. But Turkey said, not so fast, my friend, as Turkey took down Ukraine in a reverse sweep, as Turkey got oh so close to punching their ticket to the men's VNL final for the first time, which I thought was really cool. So great job to Turkey. I was very impressed by them and their resilience. I thought that match was over after that second set. I was like, okay, well, it looks like Turkey, look, they've gotten some good wins, but I think Ukraine is just too red hot for them. And Ukraine needed a bounce back win, but Turkey was able to hand Ukraine its second straight loss, and that kind of put Ukraine in a precarious situation, which we're about to find out in a little bit. But yeah, nice little reverse sweep win over Ukraine for Turkey. Then you had Slovenia taking down Iran in straight sets. This was expected as Slovenia punched their ticket to the VNL finals, though Iran really made Slovenia work for that win, as the first and third set were decided in overtime, but Slovenia was able to pull out the win very, very nicely. I wouldn't say it was the cleanest win, but Iran has proven themselves as very scrappy. Then you had Bulgaria taking down China in 4. Now, remember when I said precarious situation, or Ukraine was in a precarious situation? When they found out that Bulgaria was taking on China and they took down China in 4, that made Ukraine in a very, very sticky situation, just because Bulgaria was also fighting for its men's VNL finals life itself. As Bulgaria, if they had lost to China, first of all, that would have been embarrassing. Second of all, Bulgaria would have been out of the men's VNL finals. And third, Ukraine would have gotten ever so close to punching their ticket to the men's VNL final. But Bulgaria was able to punch the win in, though they did drop the first set. I thought Bulgaria was pretty much A-okay after that first set. The third set kind of scared me, but Bulgaria was able to pull away. Alex Nikolov just continues to do his thing. Like, he is just an alien, as one person once said. We are about to find out in a little bit that Alex Nikolov is an alien. Next up you had was Poland sweeping Brazil. Now, with this loss, Brazil, for the first time in its team's history, will fail to make the VNL finals, which is very surprising if you ask me. So Brazil missing the VNL whether it's on the men's side or the women's side just feels really odd if you ask me. But Poland is just proving why they are the back-to-back men's VNL champions. Though the second set, they needed to sweat that one out. I felt that winning that second set, 28-26, was kind of the turning point of the match. So a great job by Poland for winning that matchup. And I feel bad for Brazil. I mean, I know they're one of USA's rivals, but it just goes to show that you got to win your matches, because you got to win your matches when it matters most. Because remember, Brazil came into week 2 4-0, but then they went 1-3 in their matches, and they pretty much needed to run the table. So unfortunately for Brazil, them's the breaks. And then you had the ultimate toilet bowl. aka the relegation matchup. Canada versus Cuba. Oh man, this was the matchup that fed a lot of families. Everyone talks about Japan's better matches, or USA versus Brazil, or any of the other matches that involve like Poland or Ukraine or Turkey or any of those teams fighting for a spot for the men's VNL finals. Cuba-Canada was the match of the week because this was the match of who gets to be relegated. And first set, Cuba wound up winning it 25-22. I was like, oh gosh, this is not looking good for Canada. And then the second set, Cuba wound up winning it 25-21. Then I was really starting to think, okay, this one might be over because Canada cannot win 5-setters. And then try as Canada may, they actually made a little bit of a late comeback. They managed to get into overtime. I think Canada had a set point or two opportunity against Cuba in that third set, but Cuba wasn't having any of it. They took the third set 29-27, and Cuba was safe from relegation. But with the loss, I never thought I'd have to say these words, but Canada is going to be relegated from the men's VNL. I never thought I'd be ushering those words. I never thought I'd be saying those words. And man, USA volleyball fans, I don't think USA volleyball fans were like partying it up. But honestly, it just felt weird. I mean, some USA volleyball fans were just all they could just do is just laugh and throw their hands up and say, "What happened, Canada?" I just gotta say, how do you go from nearly taking down Japan and getting reverse swept twice in a row to now losing in 3? Like, did Canada just ultimately check out? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, the downfall of Canada needs to be studied because they were 1-1 after they took down France, who took down Italy in week 1. But ever since then, Canada has just gone down the tank, which is just unbelievable. They had lost. That was their 11th straight loss. 11 straight losses. Like, again, the downfall of Canada needs to be studied. I'm sorry, but it does need to be. And I say that with all due respect, especially to my boy Skylar Varga. But unfortunately, them's the breaks. And Cuba, unfortunately, just had a few more extra gears. And remember, Cuba was fighting for its middle blocker that they lost due to injury. But now Cuba is safe from relegation, and honestly, good for them. I was ultimately impressed by Cuba and how they've really turned it around. Because remember, they came in 0-8, and I was thinking that they were going to be the team that gets relegated. But unfortunately for Canada, they kind of took that roll out from under Cuba's nose. So a great win for Cuba. And don't look now, they had won 3 straight. I was like, where was this Cuba team in the first 2 weeks of the men's VNL? So there you go. Moving on to Saturday's matches, you had Italy sweeping Argentina. Okay, this one was kind of a little obvious. I mean, Argentina, the team that has been catching a lot of bad breaks, even though they have Agustin Loser, Italy just still found a way to beat Argentina. But tries Argentina did, Argentina literally tried their hardest. They literally did all that they could to try to not lose. But Italy was just too good for them. And Italy was still vying for a position in terms of the men's VNL finals. Then next matchup you had was a very interesting matchup. You had Slovenia taking on Turkey, and Turkey had pretty much all but sealed their hope of making the men's VNL finals. It's just that I think one more win would have sealed the deal. And even though they didn't win, they eventually got some help along the way. And Slovenia, they wound up picking up a big win, and they got one step closer to punching at least the number 2 seed, maybe the 3 seed. But either way, Slovenia picked up a big win over Turkey. Slovenia is kind of looking like a dangerous team, if I'm being really honest with you all. Slovenia, in my eyes, is a very dangerous team. Yeah, they've had a couple losses here and there. I think their only losses, if I'm not mistaken, were to Poland and Japan. But yeah, Slovenia has definitely been an impressive team this men's VNL. But that's to be expected. Next up, you had Germany reverse sweeping Serbia. This was kind of the for glory matchup, as both these teams didn't really have much to fight for, but Germany was able to pull off the reverse sweep over Serbia, which I thought was very good, if you ask me. So a good win for Germany, but man, another tough loss for Serbia. It just felt like when it rains, it pours for Serbia. And Serbia even had a good chance at making the VNL finals this week. It's just that they needed to run the table, but Germany was just too good. And both these teams were eliminated from VNL finals contention. So there you have it. Next up, you had Poland taking down France in 4. I'll give credit to France. Even though they were not going to the VNL finals, them taking a set off of Poland proved that the most dangerous team in the world, was a team that had nothing left to lose. Poland was fighting for the number 2 seed of the men's VNL finals. It was pretty much all set in stone that Poland was going to go to the VNL finals. They just need to lock up the number 2 seed, and they were one step closer to doing so, as Poland also got a little help along the way. So you're about to see it in a little bit, but Poland taking down France was huge. And speaking of that help that Poland got, Bulgaria took down the United States in 4. Now, this was kind of a payback game for the United States, as Bulgaria took down the United States in the World Championship in 5 last year. So I imagine that was kind of on the minds of the United States. But what was on the mind of Bulgaria was punching a ticket to the men's VNL finals. And here's the thing. Bulgaria need to win this matchup and the following matchup on Sunday, and then they were able to do so in terms of punching their ticket to the men's VNL finals. But Bulgaria managed to get one win out of the way. Alex Nikolov was just insane against the United States. He was just serving up a storm. He even registered his 50th service ace of the VNL, which I thought was very cool, if you ask me. This just goes to show that the Nikolov brothers, Alex and Moni, are just built different. So I got to give it up to Bulgaria. I thought this was going to be one of the tougher matches for the United States. The first 3 sets could have gone either way. The United States had their chances in set 1, and they also had their chances in set 3. But Bulgaria, being the talented team that they are, was able to shut the door on them, and they just blew them out in the 4th set. So credit to Bulgaria. They were desperate for a win, and they were desperate to try to make it to the men's VNL finals, which put them and Ukraine in a very sticky situation, just because on the final day of group stage play, if Ukraine were to win and then Bulgaria were to lose, Ukraine would advance to the men's VNL finals. But if Bulgaria were to win, no matter what would happen with Ukraine, Bulgaria would be in the men's VNL finals. But yeah, you had that matchup. And then closing off the Saturday matchups, you had these 2 matchups. You had Belgium taking down Canada in straight sets. That's the cherry on top for Canada right there. Canada wound up losing 12 straight matches after they went 1-1 to start the men's VNL. It's really sad, if you ask me. Like, Canada's going to have a little bit of ways to go, just because I think Russia should be back in the men's VNL after their ban has been lifted. And then you got other teams that are vying for a spot in the VNL as well. So you never know what's going to be happening with Canada for the 2027 VNL. So yeah, it's tough times for Canada, but them's the breaks, unfortunately. And yeah, losing your last 2 matchups in straight sets is just blah. Credit to Belgium, though. They really earned that win. I mean, Belgium was also fighting for glory. But man, if you're Canada, you just got to flush the season down the toilet and get yourself back into the VNL. Now for the final match of the Saturday matchups, you had Italy gentlemen sweeping Cuba in 4. Cuba came out ready to go when it came to this matchup. I think Cuba was just fighting for glory, and they wanted to end their VNL run on a high note with a 4-game win streak. Italy wasn't having any of that, as after they dropped the first set by 8, Italy wound up running the table and winning the next 3 sets, which eventually it still wasn't finalized of where Italy was in terms of the VNL finals. But all we know is that this Italy team still has momentum going into the VNL finals. So there you go. All right, now for the final day of group stage play on the men's side. You got Japan, Argentina. I thought this was the final match for Japan, but Japan took down Argentina in straight sets. I imagine Japan got to rest some of their starters after what was a hectic run through the men's VNL. So once again, it was kind of refreshing to see Japan not win a match in 5. I also was surprised Argentina didn't even take a set off Japan, because if Japan did rest their starters, that should have been the perfect opportunity for Argentina to beat Japan, but Japan just has a deep bench. Their depth is just on full display, and Japan, they became the first men's team to go 12-0 in the VNL. So bravo, Japan. All I gotta say is bravo. They earned it. It's just unbelievable of how great this team has been this VNL. So good job to Japan. They're 12-0 in the VNL. They finished 12-0 in group stage play. And the fact that they wound up winning 6 5-set matches is unbelievable, dude. But now let's see how they do in the VNL finals. But we shall get to, but that's for a little later. Next up, you had Turkey taking out Iran in 4. All right, this was kind of a good win for Turkey. Turkey hadn't finalized their spot in the men's VNL finals, but this was kind of the official seal of approval that Turkey was going to go dancing. So for the first time in their program's history, Turkey was VNL finals bound, which I thought was amazing. Look, Turkey isn't really known for men's volleyball all that much, with all due respect to them. They're known for women's volleyball just because they've got a couple of darn good players like Melissa Vargas, just to name one. But honestly, on the men's side, Turkey hasn't really stood out in terms of men's volleyball in the past, but now they have put themselves on the map, which I thought was unbelievably amazing. Speaking of first-time teams that have really impressed me, you had Ukraine bouncing back, halting their 2-game skid, taking down Germany in 4. Now, this one was a little sticky just because Ukraine needed to win this one, because if they had lost, Bulgaria would have been in the VNL finals automatically. So Ukraine beating Germany was big, but now they needed to hope that Bulgaria would lose to Japan. Or I'm sorry, not lose to Japan, lose to France. So you had Ukraine taking down Germany, which I thought was good, but it was kind of playing the waiting game right there. Next up, you had Brazil sweeping China. This was a for glory matchup right there. For Brazil, you got to feel bad for them just because, well, unfortunately, they will not be in the men's VNL finals for the first time in its program's history. And then China will be going dancing, even though they have a 1-15 record and they have a grand total of 4 points. 4 points. 4 points, 1 win, 15 losses. That's for later. But yeah, a good win for Brazil to end off their men's VNL run. And then Slovenia swept Serbia, which Slovenia was in a situation where if Poland were to lose to the United States, Slovenia could have a chance at the number 1 seed. But you're about to see that wasn't going to be happening. But God, Serbia just had a very bad run through the men's VNL this year. But again, them's the breaks. Now for the final 2 matchups of the men's VNL finals. So let's go over this matchup. Bulgaria-France. And I also should say, if you had the Victory Plus app, you were able to watch all of the men's VNL matches happening in Chicago, Illinois. I did not know this until Avid Volley on Instagram was able to, or basically posted this. And they basically said, this is the only men's volleyball post that you're going to be seeing out of me. But the Victory Plus app is streaming all of the men's VNL matches from Chicago, Illinois. I was just perplexed by that. It's like, really? No promotion from the United States, nothing of that. And I even reached out and messaged at Avid Volley and said, this would have definitely saved a lot of people some money, some time, and a lot of fear of missing out. And it's like, if I had known of this earlier, I would have definitely been able to basically watch this. I mean, I wouldn't have needed volleyball TV, but I digress. This would have definitely saved a lot of money from a lot of people. So why is USA Volleyball not promoting this? I mean, I guess they want volleyball TV to get the profit, but still, it's like, come on, dude. Anyway, France-Bulgaria. France, even though they had nothing to play for, they wound up sweeping Bulgaria. Now, the third set, Bulgaria actually got off to a pretty good lead. I think they led by as many as 5, but France was able to come back. Remember, they had Antoine Brizard and Mathis Heno just leading the way. Brizard was just phenomenal setting the ball. And even though Bulgaria has Alex and Moni Nikolov, it was just not enough as France was able to take down Bulgaria. And I will say this for the millionth time, and even Emily Eamon said this on the broadcast, The most dangerous team in the VNL is a team that's either fighting for relegation or that has nothing to play for. France had nothing to play for. Bulgaria had everything to lose. And Bulgaria, unfortunately, could not make it to the men's VNL final. So with the loss, Bulgaria is out of the men's VNL finals. And with that happening, Ukraine is in the men's VNL finals for the first time in its program's history. And remember, they've only been in the men's VNL for 2 years. This is only their second year, and they've made the VNL finals, which I think is very impressive. Then next up, the last matchup we had of group stage play was Poland-USA, and Poland brought out the brooms and swept the United States. It felt like it was a Poland home game in the United States. That's how well Poland travels. And it's a bummer just because the United States just didn't have any answer for Poland whatsoever, especially for Wilfredo Leon. Even in set 3, where the United States led by, I think it was by 4 or 5, Poland was able to turn it around, and they just found ways to just take down the United States. And this is just how dominant Poland is. Just when we all thought Poland was not, they were pretty much going to be taking a step back, Wilfredo Leon joins the team, and they managed to find a way to put USA to bed. Now, the United States still qualifies for the men's VNL finals, but they finished as the number 5 seed. Ukraine finished as the number 7 seed. Turkey was the number 6 seed. Poland punched their ticket as the number 2 seed, which meant Slovenia was the number 3 seed. So still, Poland is still looking like that dangerous team from the men's VNL, in the men's VNL. So that's that for all of the matchups right there. I was just impressed by Poland all weekend. And here are your men's VNL finals. You got Japan at China, Italy versus the United States, Slovenia versus Turkey, and then Poland versus Ukraine. Now, even though, like I said, even though China has 1 win and a grand total of 4 points, they are the number 8 seed, and they will be taking on Japan, who has not lost a match this year in the VNL. So this is now the topic of discussion. Should hosts automatically qualify for the VNL finals, or should FIVB scrap that and just take the top 8 teams altogether? Now, I see why FIVB still wants this, just because they want the host team to bring in their fans to see their team. They don't want to see the opposing team in action, just because that could hurt ticket sales, and you don't want to see. It's tough for like other teams and other like fans to like fly out to opposing countries and opposing sites and whatnot. But this is the second straight year where on the men's side, the worst team in the VNL has eventually wound up making the VNL finals just because they're hosting. In past years, every team, including, or I think excluding the 2021 post-COVID year, they had basically made the VNL finals even though they were hosting. It's just crazy if you ask me. So and even Alex Nikolov said this on the post-game interview where he said, we made it into the top 8. That should get us into the VNL finals. But unfortunately, the rules say that only the top 7 teams advance, plus the host of the VNL finals. So in my honest opinion, I think that rule should change. I think if your team is at the bottom of the VNL or close to the bottom, or you just have or something of that sort, you should not be hosting. A 1-win team, 1-win China should not be in the VNL finals over an impressive Bulgaria team or Brazil. I mean, don't expand the VNL to like all 16 teams advance. No, that would be a big fat NO. But do something else. Like can't you just like announce the host site like after week 2? Like you can't just announce it like in week 2 or like halfway through week 3. I mean, maybe that's just like inconvenience, just because then teams would have to wait on booking their tickets. But still, it's like, come on, dude. It's ridiculous if you ask me. So yeah, I just don't feel that it's right to see 1-win China. And another thing, China, remember when I asked you all what's going to happen if China finishes dead last, but they go to the VNL finals? Well, here's the answer. So China, even though they are dead last in the VNL. They will not be relegated. Canada, even though they finished second to last in the VNL standings, they will be relegated. So Canada had a record of 1 win and 15 losses. But here's the thing. Canada had 10 points to their name. So this kind of goes to show that they were at least fighting in their matches. China only had 1 win and 4 points. Translation: China only won 1 match, and they basically only went 5 time. But Canada is the one that's going to be relegated. I think China should be relegated. I think China should host the VNL this year, but then they should be relegated afterwards. So I'm sorry to China fans out there, but the performance has kind of really said otherwise. Your performance in the past 2 years has really stunk up the joint. So is that mean of me to say? Absolutely. But is it the truth? Absolutely. Like, I would rather see China get relegated than Canada, because Canada at least has some upside. They at least tried. I know they got reverse swept in some of their matches, and they lost 7 5-set matches, but Canada still has talent on that team of theirs. China they're just there because they're hosting, which I think is unacceptable, dude. So FIVB has kind of got to rediscuss this when it comes to their realm, but I digress. But yeah, let me know if you think that FIVB should change the whole VNL host rule to a team doesn't automatically qualify if you're hosting. That it should just be the top 8 teams hosting, or the top 8 teams playing in the VNL finals, and then they should play on a neutral site or something of that sort. I don't know. Maybe they should do it like MLV, where they announce the host site around like 3/4 of the way through the season, but I digress. But yeah, that's the topic of discussion. Should FIVB change the rules of VNL hosts hosting in or automatically qualifying for the VNL finals, or should they just take the top 8 teams? I think they should just take the top 8 teams. Or if you have another solution, just let me know. But yeah, the men's VNL finals are on your screen. So there you have it. We'll preview that next week, but until then, that's going to do it for the men's VNL. We're going to take ourselves a commercial break. When we come back, we've got the women's VNL to preview, and we've got some AVP to discuss, and then we got a little NCAA women's volleyball news. So keep it locked here. You were listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
From the stadium lights to the stadium shade, the clubhouse crews, the on-field MCs, delicious park food and the summer breeze. Every voice in the game. Catch Dirt and Diamonds every single week. The California League coverage that you'll seek, with Larry B and Freddie B running the show. Every minor league season for the latest in the California League with Larry B and Freddie B on iSports Radio. Keep that dirt flying, and we'll see you next pitch.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows on iSports Radio, such as Dirt and Diamonds. That normally airs every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So definitely check that out. And also check out all of our other shows. We have shows dedicated to like basketball with Fast Break. You've got Shin Pads and Shenanigans with Big Mike and oh gosh, why am I blanking on her name? How am I blanking on her name? It's Jess. I was about to say Jen, but Jess and Big Mike. I'm sorry, Jess. But anyway, you got Soccer with Shin Pads and Shenanigans with Jess and Big Mike. You got the Neutral Zone with Adam Karnick and Freddie B. You've got Bullpen Bulletin happening as well with Mike Pat as well as Freddie B. And soon we'll have 3 and Out with myself, Larry B, and Big Mike. So there you have it right there. So with that being said, let's get back on into the volleyball action. So welcome back to the second half of Set Points here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. All right, so let's preview the women's VNL. So we are already, but first, before we preview the women's VNL finals, let's go over the women's national team roster. And where is my roster? There's my roster. So there's the roster. So there's the roster on your screen. That's for the women's VNL finals. So I just want your guys' opinion. What do you think of it? It doesn't look like the roster has changed too much. I will just say that it looks like that's not it. But yeah, this is the VNL finals. You got on screen Micah Hancock, Jordan Poulter, Avery Skinner, Morgan Hance, Asia O'Neal, Lexi Rodriguez, Simone Lee Wank, Sage Ka'aina Torres, Maddie Cubic Banks, Chiaka Agbagu, Dana Retke, Jordan Thompson, Sage Ka'aina Torres, Molly McCage, Logan Eggleston, and Stephanie Samity. It does not look like anything has changed in terms of their roster. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. Yeah, it does not look like it doesn't look like their roster has ultimately changed all that much. I'm just trying to confirm that, but honestly, it looks like nothing really changed. Here's the week 3 roster: Micah Hancock, Jordan Poulter, Avery Skinner, Morgan Hance, Asia O'Neal, Lexi Rodriguez. Okay, so it looks like okay. So Chiaka Agbagu is not on this week's roster, so that sucks. But it is what it is, and sometimes them's the breaks, sadly. So, it is what it is, and I can't. Most of it is still the same. Most of it is still okay. Chiaka Agbagu is still on the roster, so all the roster is not, changed. So basically, the United States said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And honestly, that's kind of the way to go. I mean, some people are still clamoring for Sarah Franklin to be on the roster. I thought Sarah Franklin was going to be on the roster, but maybe they just saw something that we unfortunately did not see. So there you go. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the U.S. women's roster for this week? So still the same one as week 2 and week 3, but in Eric Sullivan we trust just because he knows something that we don't. So there you have it right there. But now it's time. Oop, that ain't it. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to preview the women's VNL final. So let's actually get rid of this banner. So here are the women's VNL finals in all of its glory. So the times have been announced for the women's VNL finals. So everything's going to be starting on Wednesday. The first matchup is going to be I think it's Italy, Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. I just got to confirm that. It's two of the right side brackets. Two of the right side bracket matches. Just got to confirm that. Yeah, it is Italy, Netherlands. I'm proud of myself. So Italy, Netherlands is the first matchup. If you're watching this on West Coast time, I feel bad for you. And if you're watching on East Coast time or Central time, better grab your coffee and something like they'll perk you up. So There's all of your matchups right there. Those are the matchups on screen. That's courtesy of the VNL finals, and the USA volleyball graphic was courtesy of obviously USA volleyball. But there you have it right there. So the first matchup we have is Italy-Netherlands. So we're going to go in chronological order. So Italy-Netherlands. So it's the 2-seed Italy versus the 7-seed Netherlands. So Netherlands pretty much wound up coming in clutch on the final day of the women's VNL in terms of group stage play. This team is really impressive, if you ask me. I think this Netherlands team, it deserves a lot of credit. The problem is that Italy now has their full roster. They've got Paula Egonu. They've got Ekaterina Antropova. They've got most of their 18 players that helped win the VNL last year. So, look, Netherlands will push Italy, but I think Italy ultimately wins this. I think Italy manages to put together a masterclass matchup, but I think Netherlands is going to fight tooth and nail just because Netherlands does have a solid roster. It's just that Italy's is way more solid. And against Italy, you just can't be solid. You got to actually be really good. So there you have it right there. And then the next matchup following Italy-Netherlands is Brazil-Japan. Now, this is the matchup of the week right here in terms of the quarterfinals. Now, here's my thing for Brazil. They've lost 2 straight. They lost their star middle blocker, Julia Kudis, to another season-ending injury, and I feel bad. Brazil has lost 2 straight, and they got to figure things out. Now is the time. I guess their silver lining for losing to Thailand and the United States is that it's better they lost now or better they lost then instead of losing now. So now they can't lose. And they face a Japan team, which is really interesting just because Japan is well known for being scrappy defensively and just tiring out their opponents and just basically just playing all sorts of just all-out offense and defense. But here's the thing. Japan isn't necessarily too far from Brazil. My biggest concern for Brazil is, will Kudias's injury be too much for them? Will Julia Bergman step up? Will Anna Cristina step up? Will Japan just have another masterclass performance defensively? My answer to that is I think Brazil gets the job done. But this is where it's not going to be easy. I think Brazil gets it done, but they're going to get it done in 5. I think this match goes 5 regardless of what happens, regardless of who wins. I have Brazil winning it, but it's going to be so close if you ask me. So I think Brazil takes it, but it's going to be so tight. All right, so that's that for the Wednesday matchups. Then the Thursday matchup, you got Turkey versus Canada. All right, this is going to be a very fun match. This is probably the second best match behind Brazil-Japan. Canada is making its first ever VNL finals appearance on the women's side, while Turkey looks to add a second VNL championship to their ever so prestige honor. Here's the thing about Canada. Do I trust them in terms of winning this matchup? I definitely think it's possible. Here's the thing that we all need to remember. Turkey still has Melissa Vargas on their team. That team is still very, very, very dangerous. And you also got to remember, Turkey has been through so many injuries. They've had players basically, be out for the remainder of the VNL. They've had basically a lot of players out they've had players miss extended periods of time. It's just ridiculous if you ask me. But despite all that, Turkey has just found a way to win. They just continue to find ways to win, and it's just unbelievable if you ask me. It's really astounding if you ask me. They've also got Kara Kurt as well as other players. Like they still have Merve. I forget her first name, but they have Merve, Kara Kurt, Vargas. This team is not short of any talent by any means. Even though they've been losing a lot of their top players, this Turkey team has really proven that they belong in the women's VNL. But here's my thing for Canada. God, it's like one of these teams that's really good that fought their you-know-what off is going to be losing. But this is kind of the ugly part of the 4 versus 5 matchup, just because it just feels both these teams just feel like they're evenly matched. And you've got, and then on the Canada side, you've got Kira Van Rick, you've got Serena Gray, you've got, I forget her last name, but it's Emma. I think they also have Logan King on this roster. Wow, Logan King is on this roster? I didn't know that. They got Fayad on the roster. They've got Emily Maglio. This Canada team is stacked all across the board. My question is, who wins this matchup? It's just so tough, just because it's kind of like the Super Bowl matchup, where a matchup in the Super Bowl where one team checks off one box while the other team checks off another box. Turkey and Canada just seem to check off all the boxes. I'm going to regret this pick so much, but I have Canada winning. I think Canada makes history. My only concern for Canada is inexperience. Melissa Vargas, and then experience from the Turkey side. But I think Canada gets it done. They just barely inch out a win, just because I think Canada's defense will carry them to the win. I think their defense turning them into offense will carry them to the win. But it's going to be very close. I think Canada is a good team, but they're far from perfect. But this year has been a historical generation run. I think we get Canada in the semifinals, and then Canada makes history. And that's no disrespect to Turkey. I don't want to hear it from any Turkey fans. I really don't want to hear it from anybody. I don't want to hear it from nobody in terms of volleyball fandom or media. I just think Canada just barely gets the job done, and they continue their historic run. But we shall see. And then the last matchup of the quarterfinals is the matchup that USA fans are probably going to hope to see. And if you're watching this on Hawaii time, I feel sorry for you. USA versus China. So China, look here. China is actually not a bad team by any means, just because unlike their men's team, their women's team actually finished right outside the top 8, as China finished 6-6, while Poland finished 7-5. Only difference is that China is the host team, while Poland is the team that's on the outside looking in. But for China, this is where I'm concerned for the U.S. They're the number 1 seed, but my concern for them is, can they win on the road? Because remember, they took on Canada, and they wound up getting swept out the gym, which was very surprising. And that was a first, just because they had never been swept by Canada, nor had they never lost to Canada in the VNL. But nor do I think they lost to Canada ever. But there's the first time for everything. But this is kind of a rivalry renewed. I think China used to be the rival of the United States until China kind of fell off. Here's my thing for the U.S. If they win this matchup, this is definitely a momentum booster, just because, well, for starters, winning on the road in what should be a raucous crowd would be a big plus for them. But it's not going to be easy. This is going to be one of those easier said than done matches, just because in the past I have seen the U.S. struggle to take down the U.S. or to take down the VNL host on the women's side. I think it was like somewhere in, I think it was 2018 or 19, not the post-COVID or not the pre-COVID, or yeah, it was pre-COVID. The U.S. was the number 1 seed. I think they won like 11 matches, if not 10 matches, and then they were just one and done because Serbia was the host team, and then Serbia wound up taking down the U.S. in 5, which was unbelievable. But I think I got the U.S. beating China, but I just think it'll be a lot closer than expected. So I think it'll be USA, Canada, Brazil, and Italy advancing out of the quarterfinals. Now for the semifinals, I would have Brazil versus Italy, which that's going to feed a lot of families. Here's my thing. Brazil beat Italy in 5 the first go-around, but we all got to remember that Italy put up a fight without most of their players. Remember, Italy in week 1 of the VNL against Brazil did not have any of their players in their primary position. All they had was their setter and their libero from last year's team. And I get it. Brazil didn't have Ana Cristina, But they still had Julia Bergman, who was just fantastic. And they had other players step up as well. But here's the thing. Now that Italy has most of, if not all of their top players back on their roster, I think this Italy team is dangerous. This is going to be the Italy team that really proves to everybody, that reintroduces themselves, that they were last year's VNL champions and they were the gold medalists from the 2024 Olympics. So that being said, Brazil still has a lot of firepower, even though they lost Cudias to injury. But with all that being said, this is going to be a tight matchup, but I think Italy advances past Brazil. It'll be close. I know Brazil will have pulled off a big-time victory if my prediction remains correct, but I think Italy pulls off the win and they advance to the VNL finals for, I think it's their third straight VNL finals. Yeah, the third straight VNL finals. So I think it's definitely doable that Italy can win, but they're going to need to throw everything in the kitchen sink against Brazil. But we shall see. And then the other semifinal I have is the United States and Canada. This is my dream matchup. Realistically, I would honestly pick Turkey, but I also don't want it to be all chalk. I want to have at least one upset. But USA-Canada round 2. Look, Eric Sullivan cannot butcher this. He cannot butcher this. And now that the United States has most of their 8-team rosters, like Jordan Poulter, Dana Retke, just to name a few, they should be in better hands taking on the likes of Canada. And as long as Eric Sullivan puts the correct players on that court, there's no way the U.S. there's no way the U.S. loses. If Eric Sullivan has a disaster class of coaching, if the U.S. just plays down to Canada's level or they play below Canada's level, I think the U.S. could lose. But honestly, I think the U.S. advances. I think the favorable matchup is Canada. Just because, for me, I want to see the U.S. get revenge on Canada. I think USA volleyball fans want to see revenge on Canada just because that loss to Canada should not have happened. But either way, I think the U.S. should be fine. I mean, the preferred matchup is against Canada. If they take on Turkey, I just think that the U.S. is going to have a little bit tougher of a time. But I think the U.S. advances to the VNL championship match no matter what happens. So give me the United States taking out Canada in the semifinals. And then the final, I have the United States and Italy, both teams that have won the VNL 3 times, which I think is pretty cool. But here's the thing. Both these teams are evenly matched. I know Italy played their B team, and here's my thing. Italy is going to be really tough this go-around, but here's where I object to that. I think the United States is a lot better this time around than they were the first time around. And I think they're a lot better this year than they were last year. Last year was kind of a disaster year just because Eric Sullivan was in his first year and he still was trying to get accustomed to being a head coach. And obviously the players just needed time to adjust to Eric Sullivan's coaching style as opposed to being apart from Karch Karai's. But who I have winning this matchup, I got the United States winning. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, Teran, you're being biased just because you're from the United States. Yes, but here's my thing. I picked the Italy to beat the United States last year in last year's VNL finals. This time around, the shoe's on the other foot. I'm picking the United States to beat Italy. It's going to be a barn burner, though. I think this is the matchup where the United States has to sweat this one out. And this is going to be a rival. This is going to be a rekindled rivalry. It's not going to be where Italy sweeps them. It's going to be where the United States flips the script and they pull off the big win of their own. It's not going to be easy by any means, just because the United States definitely has a lot of firepower and they have a lot of returning experience. But Italy is definitely going to be ready, and they're definitely going to be raring to go, just because Italy wants revenge against the United States after their B team lost. Italy's B team lost to the United States' A team. But either way, I think I got the United States winning the gold in terms of this year's women's VNL. And then for the bronze medal match, I might as well just say it right now. I got Brazil beating Canada. I think bronze medal matches are so tricky just because sometimes teams will just say, all right, well, we might as well just put in the reserves just to avoid injury. But I think Brazil will say, we don't want to end this on a sour note. We want to get at least some sort of medal. Because for Brazil, this year is gold medal or bust, from what I'm hearing. But I think for Brazil, they're at least going to get bronze. Do I think they can beat Italy? Absolutely. Do I think Italy with Paula Egonu and Ekaterina Antropova and all their other 18 players can win? Absolutely. But I think this year's VNL is so wide open this year, just because other than China, every team finished at least 2 games above 500. Like, every team is more than capable of winning the VNL this year. So definitely keep an eye out for all these teams. And this is going to be a fun matchup. But I have the United States getting the gold, Italy getting silver, and Brazil getting the bronze. Well, who do you think will win this year's women's VNL? Just let me know. And am I going to be wrong? Most likely. But do I care? No. I'm ready to eat as much crow as I possibly can on next week's show. So there you go. All right, but that's that for the women's VNL. Again, everything starts on Wednesday, and then Thursday is the quarterfinals, and then I think the semifinals is on Friday. No, it's on Saturday. So it's on Saturday, and then the bronze medal match is going to be at 12:30 on West Coast time, and then the gold medal match will be at 4:30 a.m. So I'm not looking forward to that. If you haven't gotten your streaming service from Volleyball TV fired up again, definitely do so, because I have. Anyway, but that'll do it for the women's VNL preview. I swear, Eric Sullivan, you better not turn me into a liar, because if you do, we're going to have a nice little chat when you all come to UC Irvine. Anyway, that'll do it for that little preview of the women's VNL finals. So now let's talk a little AVP League Week 6 recap. So the AVP League had a little bit of a crazy week, if you ask me. So it was supposed to be played last Saturday and Sunday, but because of the inclement weather that occurred, every match had to be pushed to Sunday. So they had to get an early start on Sunday, and then they had to basically just play everything around. They had to play everything. So anyway, so we'll start off with the matchups courtesy of Beach Volleyball Database. So AVP League Week 6. This took place in Central Park at Woolman Rink in New York. But either way, it's Central Park, New York, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, the New York Nitro were hosting this week just because they're the New York Nitro, and yeah. It took place in New York. Yeah, Woolman Rink in New York. Pretty cool if you ask me. So anyway, so all Saturday matches were postponed just because of the inclement weather. So everything got pushed to Sunday. So the first matchup, according to so I was concerned on if they were going to have to make up the matches or just have the matches on Monday, but 8 a.m. Eastern time, which was way too early in the morning for me, was the women's Palm Beach Passion versus the women's San Diego Smash. So, yeah, we'll go in chronological order. So we'll start off with the women's Palm Beach Passion, unlike the other matchups that I've been doing. So women's Palm Beach Passion is... women's Palm Beach Passion is Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango of the San Diego Smash taking on Melissa Jimenez Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson. In the end, I don't want to say this to be negative toward Megan Rice and Gina Arango, but this was kind of a mismatch. It's Olympians versus experienced AVP player and somewhat experienced AVP player. But the Olympians were going to come out on top regardless, as Melissa Jimenez Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson took down Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango 15-4 and 15-12. Yeah, that first set was a nightmare for Rice and Arango, but yeah, the Canadian duo just got the job done. So good work for Wilkerson and Paredes, or Jimenez Paredes. Then next up, we had the Austin Aces taking on the New York Nitro. So this was the battle of, the New York Nitro and Austin Aces. Tony Rodriguez and Molly Shaw taking on Taryn Brasher and Kristen Cruz. So a lot of LSU royalty. You had Tony Rodriguez, Teran Brasher, and Kristen Cruz, and then you had Molly Shaw, who was the lone GCU player. But I digress. In the end, TKN, or Teran Kristen Nation, took down Tony Rodriguez and Molly Shaw 13-15, 15-8, and then 15-12. So nice little win for TKN. Though I will say Shaw and Rodriguez salvaging a point was pretty darn impressive, if you ask me, just because those two haven't really been together for too long, but it just shows that those two have good team chemistry with one another. So good job to them. The next up, you had the men's Austin Aces versus the men's New York Nitro. So on the men's side, you had Kame Shulk and James Shaw. Yes, James Shaw is Molly Shaw's husband, FYI. And then Kame Shulk taking on Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox. And in the end, Shaw and Shulk took down Field and Wilcox 15-10, 11-15, and 15-11. So nice little three-set battle right there between those two, as Shulk and Shaw earn the win and they get 2 points, while Field and Wilcox get only 1 point. And then closing off the morning session, you had the men's Palm Beach Passion taking on the men's San Diego Smash. So you had Chase Bundinger and Miles Evans of the Smash taking on Trevor Crabb and Phil Dahlhauser of the Passion. And in the end, Dahlhauser and Crabb took down Bundinger and Evans in straight sets, 15-11 and 15-12. Interestingly enough, this was the battle of the Olympians, but Trevor Crabb and Dahlhauser just had more experience. They have more experience with one another. So, and also more Olympic experience and whatnot, and more AVP experience. But still solid showing by Evans and Bundinger. But Dahlhauser is the Slim Reaper, and Trevor Crabb is just still on a tear. So that's a nice win right there. So that was that for the morning session. Now for the afternoon session, we had the women's Austin Aces versus the men's, the women's Austin Aces versus the women's Palm Beach Passion, which meant only one thing. You got to see TKN, Teran Brasher, and Kristen Cruz take on Melissa Jimana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson. So this was matchup number 23 between the two teams, as Jimana-Paredes, TKN, Teran, and Kristen led the series 15-7, which I thought was pretty cool, if you ask me. That's kind of your Snapple fun fact right there. Going into that matchup, the 22nd, was it the 22nd or 23rd matchup? 23rd matchup, TKN led the series, the all-time series when it comes to Olympics, World Championship, FIVB, AVP, all that sort of thing, 15-7. But that actually changed as Melissa Jimana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson took down TKN in straight sets. Yeah, in straight sets, 15-13 and 15-11. So kind of a surprise to see there. But man, this team right here, Palm Beach Passion, you know how I said that the Miami Mayhem was cracked in terms of their team being stacked? Well, the Passion is just as stacked because they've got 4 Olympians on their roster in terms of the past and the present. So the fact that Melissa Jimana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson wound up picking up that win was pretty impressive. So now TKN leads the all-time series against Melissa Jimana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson by a record of 15 wins to 8 losses. So there you go. So other than that matchup, you had the men's Austin Aces versus the men's Palm Beach Passion. And just like on the women's side, the men's Palm Beach Passion, led by Phil Dahlhauser and Trevor Crabb, took down the men's Austin Aces of Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox in straight sets, 15-9 and 15-12. This wasn't ultimately surprising just because the Passion, look, they've got a lot of experience on the roster, not just Olympics, but in terms of FIVB and AVP. And look, Trevor Crabb and Phil Dahlhauser are a definite deadly duo. I think it's between the Palm Beach Passion and the Miami Mayhem in terms of winning the AVP league, in terms of the regular season and in terms of the men's and women's side. But we shall see. And then closing off the AVP, in terms of a full day of the AVP, you have the women's San Diego Smash versus the women's New York Nitro. That just so happened to be Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango of the Smash taking on Tony Rodriguez and Molly Shaw of the Nitro. In the end, Shaw and Rodriguez took down Arango and Rice 15-10 and 15-8. This was a very tough week for Rice and Arango, but sometimes it just happens, and that I think it is just a little bit more of rust versus them not being so good. So I still think that Rice and Arango are still on the rise in terms of a pair, but they just need more time to mesh with one another. But that's that for that matchup. And then the last matchup was the men's San Diego Smash versus the men's New York Nitro, as Chase Buninger and Miles Evans of the Smash took on the Nitros, James Shaw and Kame Shulk. In the end, Shaw and Shulk took down Evans and Budinger in straight sets 15-13 and 15-9. Shaw and Shulk, look, they just have more experience with one another in terms of partnership. And this was a big week for the New York Nitro, as they only lost one match. And there's no shame in losing to your rival in terms of the Palm Beach Passion, which you know all too well. But yeah, the New York Nitro going 3-1, that's still pretty darn solid if you ask me. And then the Palm Beach Passion going 4-0 was also pretty good. It's just that, unfortunately, the Austin Aces only salvaged one win with 3 points, and then the San Diego Smash just salvaged nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nothing. But there's still plenty of time for the San Diego Smash. But that is that for AVP League Week 6. Crazy week right there, because they had to cram every AVP League match of Week 6 into one day. So I imagine all the athletes were tired and whatnot. So there you go. All right, but that is that right there when it comes to that that AVP League. So now we go to AVP League Week 7, which takes us to EHP Resort and Marina. I imagine I'm going to take a stab and say that is located in Miami, just because I don't really know where else that would be. But maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, sorry. But yeah, EHP Resort and Marina. That's going to be in East Hampton, New York. So it's another New York. So at the very least, some of the AVP League athletes don't have to go too far in terms of where they need to go in terms of the AVP. So this is week 7. We're heading toward the end of the AVP League regular season. Excuse me for 1 sec. All right, so sorry, I just had to sneeze there. But yeah, we're getting toward the home stretch in terms of the AVP League. So the league championship is on September 5th and 6th, which will be held in Chicago, Illinois. Even though there's no Chicago team, but I digress. Anyway, so this week we go to East Hampton, New York, and it says so on the beach volleyball database. Anyway, so looking at the schedule, so event details. This week, the 2026 AVP League arrives at EHP Resort and Marina, nestled on the shores of East Hampton, New York, with iconic views of 3 Mile Harbor, luxury standalone cottages and suites, and 2 of the hottest waterfront restaurants in the Hamptons. AVP, you're killing me. They put week 4. Someone here is going to get fired. AVP, if you're hiring for website editor, I will gladly be a part of that. Your editing stinks, dude. Week 4. They put week 4. Week 4. Anyway, week 7 is sure to be one of this year's most unique and exciting league events. Anyway. The matchup schedule is the San Diego Smash versus the Austin Aces. So it looks like, barring no inclement weather or bad weather, the San Diego Smash and the Austin Aces on the men's and women's side will face one another, and the Miami Mayhem and the Brooklyn Blaze will face one another. Then on Sunday, you've got the San Diego Smash and the Miami Mayhem facing one another, and then the Austin Aces and the Brooklyn Blaze facing one another. So looking at the matchups via Beach Volleyball Database, you've got San Diego Smash versus Austin Aces, Chase Buninger and Miles Evans on the men's side versus Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox. And on the women's side, you got Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango taking on Taryn Brasher and Kristen Cruz. Then the Miami Mayhem and the Brooklyn Blaze, you've got Andy Benish and Taylor Crabb taking on Derek Bradford and Evan Corey. And then on the women's side, you've got Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft of the Miami Mayhem taking on the Brooklyn Blazers, Lexi Denneberg and Julia Donlin. A lot of USC royalty, even though Lexi Denneberg is the lone UCLA gal. And then on day 2, you've got the San Diego Smash versus the Miami Mayhem. You've got Chase Budinger and Miles Evans of the Smash taking on Andy Benish and Taylor Crabb of the Mayhem. And then on the women's side, you got Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango taking on Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft. So it's kind of the battle of the Megans. Then closing off the AVP League, you've got the Austin Aces and the Brooklyn Blaze. On the men's side, you got Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox taking on Derek Bradford and Evan Corey. And then on the women's side, you got TKN, Taryn Brasher, and Kristen Cruz taking on Lexi Denneberg and Julia Donlin. That matchup's going to be a very unique matchup just because those two have been meeting with one another in not only the AVP, but in FIVB events. I think their most recent FIVB event in Gastad saw Denneberg and Donlin take on TKN in the semifinals, where TKN took down Lexi Denneberg and Julia Donlin in the semis. So I think it's pretty cool right there, if you ask me. And yeah, I think it's awesome that we get to see those two, because Denneberg and Donlin could be future Olympians. I know Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft are going to be future Olympians, but we shall wait and see. As who knows? You never know what can happen in the span of about 2 or so years, less than 2 years away before the 2028 Olympics happening in Los Angeles. So there you have it right there. That's the AVP League Week 7 preview. So soon the AVP League will be getting to the AVP Championship. But before we head on out, or before I send you all on your way, I do got to mention that the USA Volleyball is actually going to be having a Challenge Cup against Canada, or actually, hold on. USA got to be a little bit more specific. USA Women's Volleyball. I should have been more specific. Yeah, USA Women's Volleyball will be having the Challenge Cup against Canada on Saturday, August 15th at Jenny Craig Pavilion at the University of San Diego, and on Sunday, August 16th at UC Irvine at the Bren Event Center. You already know I'm going to be at the UC Irvine one. I already know. I just need to get the green light from Laura Fawcett, but I'm sure she will. I can't imagine she not giving me the green light just because I'm on good terms with USA Volleyball. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go to the University of San Diego one just because, for starters, it's all the way down in San Diego, and there's going to be a lot of volleyball happening. There's going to be some high school volleyball I'm going to be covering. There's going to be the AVP's Manhattan Beach Open, and there's going to be some scrimmages. Like USC and UC Irvine are going to be scrimmaging that day on August 15th. There's just so much volleyball. I can't cover it all. It's like, even though the Canada-USA matchup is going to be at 7 p.m. So 7 p.m. Pacific time, mind you, but I digress. But yeah, that's your information. Get your tickets while you can and get your credentials while you can. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to attend the UCI one. I should, though, but you never know, especially with what happened with the NCAA men's volleyball Final Four national championship. I'm looking at you, person who denied me, but I digress. But anyway, just needed to make note of that right there. Tickets are on sale. I sound like a USA Volleyball spokesperson. Hire me, USA Volleyball. Anyway, yeah, get your tickets while you can, and if you're a media person, get your credential while you can. Anyway, but that'll do it for that little bit of news right there. So one last thing, and then I'll let you all go for the time being. So NCAA Women's Volleyball announced today their national semifinals and national championship dates and times. So December 17th will be the national semifinals. So the first semifinal will be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, which will be 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, and then 5:30 p.m. Central time. The reason why I'm mentioning Central time is because the national semifinals and national championship will take place in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me. So the first semifinal, like I mentioned, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. The second semifinal will be 30 minutes after the national semifinal. And 30 minutes after. I thought I messed up in terms of the in terms of my little banner. But the national championship will be on Sunday, December 20th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All the matches, the Final Four and national championship, will be at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. God, I wish this took place at TCU. If it did, I would definitely try to fly out to visit my brother and to go to the and to maybe go to that. But since it's in San Antonio, I imagine that's a little bit more of a drive from Bedford in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But I digress. But that's all your information right there. Maybe unless my mom and my brother want to give me an early Christmas present, I doubt I'll be making it, but we shall see. I mean, you never know. But you never know, though. I mean, I'd like to go down there to see the national championship and the national semifinals. But unfortunately, I just don't know what to expect just because you never know with weather. The weather might be horrible and flights are probably going to be rising up just because of like other people flying out from different places for holidays and whatnot. But we'll see. But yeah, this is basically all the information regarding the national semifinals and national championship of the NCAA women's volleyball. So there you go. So that'll do it for that little bit of news right there. And ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this week's episode of Set Point. We're already through the home stretch of summer. We're already 11 days away, 12 days away from August, which means soon we're going to get some NCAA women's volleyball, which I'm going to be happy for. I mean, I'm happy with NCAA men's volleyball too, but I'm going to be happy for NCAA women's volleyball just because I'm going to try to cover as much USC content, much UC Irvine content, and then as much Long Beach State content. This is an LB, by the way. But yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm going to do my best to try to cover as much NCAA women's volleyball as possible. So there you have it right there. But until then, that'll do it for this week's episode of Set Point. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have a great rest of the week. Stay cool because it is hot. For those that went to Chicago and that had to deal with the smoldering heat, my condolences to you. But yeah, stay cool, everybody. We're not through the heat wave just yet. Just wear your sunscreen, stay hydrated, and stay cool while you can. I will see you all probably in a couple more weeks for something that I will be announcing in terms of my volleyball content. But until then, have a great week. And once again, thank you to everyone for 500 subscribers on YouTube. We at iSports Radio definitely appreciate it. So just want to give you all that thank you. Until then, have a great week, everybody. Peace.
Set point, turn it up, let's go! iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. From the high school gyms to the college lights, from the beach in the sun to the world stage bright. Every serve, every spike, every rally on fire. Teran Rodriguez takes the game even higher. NCAA men, NCAA women too. Beach volleyball, AVP and the pro leagues breaking through. La vie, international Olympic dreams inside. If it's volleyball, we're talking all night. Set point, we're live tonight. With Teran Rodriguez bringing volleyball live. iSports Radio, feel that energy. Your direct feed for all that is sports, that's the key. Set point, the net is tight. Serve it, spike it, bring the heat all night. From the sand to the court, let the whole world know. Set point's here. Let's start the show. One ball, one court, one voice, one sound. Volleyball family, gather around. Every block, every ace, every championship round.